I read Frankenstein, and I figured that while I was at it, I might as well read the other all-time indubitable Gothic horror classic, which is, of course, Dracula. It was written about 60 years later, published in 1897 by an Irishman, Abraham, or Bram, Stoker. Stoker wrote a dozen novels, as well as a bunch of other books, non-fiction, technical stuff, memoirs, but the one that will be remembered, his blockbuster, is Dracula. It is, in many ways, a scintillating, thrilling piece of writing. I thought I would dread it, and parts of it did drag, some of it felt repetitive, and he loves to go into great detail, especially when he adopts the voice of a sea captain or a working stiff. He does go on, but a good deal of it was riveting in an awful, gruesome way. In Mary Shelley's book, there's a ton of talk and exposition, and most of the action takes place off stage. What we get is a lot of horrified reaction. Stoker is much more direct. We go right into the cemetery, torches held high, enter the crypt, unscrew the coffin, behold the young woman, her body so recently deceased, and yet impossibly it somehow seems suffused with blood. She's more beautiful than ever, and we know it's because she's been feeding on children. So to kill the demon she's become, we drive a wooden spike through her heart, which causes her to thrash and howl and growl, and then we cut off her head. Amen to all that, Bubba. Similarly, when Dracula is on his game, hard at work on the throat of a maiden, or flying like a bat, or scaling the castle wall like a lizard, or bounding off like a great dog, we're right there with him. I think it would be fair to call this a graphic novel. It's pretty close to Gothic porn. It was written to shock, and it still packs a punch. And the setting is terrific. Transylvania, the rugged Carpathian mountains inhabited by gypsies and tremendously superstitious people, and then topping it all off, high on a crag, the castle Dracula, home of the evil one. In Frankenstein, the creature is alone, and he suffers for it. Dracula is also an isolated figure, but there's no sense of sadness connected to that. He is a count, a noble, in a way, a figure, a lord of evil, a prince of darkness. As villains go, he's a towering figure. To make it seem believable, the story is told by the journal entries, letters, and memorandums, along with a few newspaper clippings, of the people who will be trying to destroy the vampire, which is a cannibal on a liquid diet. Dracula is attempting to expand his territory, move to London, a fresh market. He buys some old buildings there and ships 50 boxes, coffins, of earth, so he can have safe havens of rest during the daytime. His business model for expansion is a good one, but in feeding on one maiden, he kills her, and her friends, guided by an expert in such matters, one Dr. von Helsing, seek revenge. In the end, which went on a bit too long for me, suspense not being infinitely elastic, they do manage, rather abruptly, after all the build-up, to slay the vampire, who turns to dust. Stoker was better known as the personal assistant to a famous actor of the time, Henry Irving. This may account for his very theatrical writing. He was also the business manager of Irving's Lyceum Theatre in London. He was friends with Oscar Wilde, but in 1912 he called for the arrest of all homosexuals in Great Britain. There is a thought that this might have been a protective cover, as was his marriage, which produced a son. This thought led to another, the possible theme or impact of homosexuality on the book, but I don't know about that. I will say that a painter works with light, and a writer is engaged with time. His theme is time. Life, brief, death, a mystery. His characters live and die in time. His plot is bound together by time. Think of Shakespeare and the sonnets. So for a writer, time is indispensable, of the essence. Dracula, alone among men, has found a way to defeat time. Time has no effect on him, or if it did, he could mitigate that. defy that, overcome that. It seems that he did little but assure his continued existence. His life had no more meaning than that, and it came at the expense, in the blood, of other humans. All his efforts were concentrated on extending his existence as one undead, and perhaps in doing so, to create a new race of beings, the undead. But he didn't seem to have a driving interest in that. That was just a byproduct of his bloodlust. He was consumed with himself, and that proved to be, in the end, for all his strength, his greatest weakness. Poor Dracula. His powers were formidable, godlike, a true supervillain. But no one had his back.